In this video, we are talking about the war between Disney and DeSantis out there in Orlando. Things are heating up.
Because now there's a new sheriff in town.
Yet again, we're going to talk about it up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. We're diving into some pretty meaty, pretty heavy stuff today. We're talking Florida politics. We're talking all kinds of stuff. Everything Reedy Creek. But before I do that, I want to introduce my brother, my fantastic collaborator, Dr. Dre, the fire marshal, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on the channel. Welcome back, Dre.
And I am happy to be back. This is one that people have been anticipating from us for quite some time.
Yeah.
I know we've been a little bit slow to bring this one out here, but this is a very complex matter here. You know, even people with their hot takes at first, you know, even their views kind of morphed over time as a lot of this started to come to more into the sunlight, let's say, the Florida sunlight.
Florida sunshine.
Florida sunshine laws, right? I kind of wanted to, I was talking with OG about this, kind of wanted to, let's just see, you know, let's just try to absorb as much as we could before actually speaking about it. And I'm sure there is more to come from this, as we will explain. So, but hey, we have the shareholders conference tomorrow.
Yes,
Couldn't wait any longer. You know that's going to suck a lot of air out of the room. So, without any further ado, as I think our boy Darth Vader would say here.
You may dispense with the pleasantries, Commander.
Of course.
That wasn't Christine Waysines McCarthy? Oh. Pretty close.
Pretty close, though. I can see the confusion. I can see where that would arrive from. But as Christine Waysines McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussions right there, you can type that in at Vash Sky into Twitter, and it should pop up for you thusly if you guys want to follow me. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on channel you watch right now at Orange Grove 55, where we have some amazing shows, including Story Geeks with Jay, where we are covering every single Mandalorian episode as it comes out from this season 3 here. We have Citrus Corner with our buddy George, where we cover everything Walt Disney World. Orange Nerd and Orange Grove 55, hosted by the person to my left right here. And my own show there as well, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh, right from the Grove.
There we go. Well, let's get the party started. Go ahead, Dre, set the table, and we'll go from there.
Yes. So, we thought this was all behind us, right? We thought this was all good, that... and look, Jeff Vail and everybody, you know, around Disney was like, oh, we're, you know what? Bygones be bygones. Reedy Creek Improvement District is no more, but we're happy to work within the new structure as provided by the Florida legislature and by the governor himself. And we're happy to, work side by side in accomplishing a mutual goal, right? That's where the story we thought had concluded. But now things are just a little bit different here. So I'm going to go ahead and let WKMG News here take over. If we get a strike here, though, or if we had to take this down, don't worry, we'll set the table as well. But I thought Absolutely. They did a nice little recap here.
Perfect.
Between Walt Disney World and the new state board that oversees its special governing district.
In February, the governor signed a bill into law giving the state control of the former Reedy Creek Improvement District.
But as the new board members just discovered, the former board may have given away much of its power to Disney. News 6's Carolina Cardona joins us now live from Orange County with the details on this development. Carolina?
Lisa, the new board said that the agreements between the Walt Disney Company and the former Reedy Creek board members are going to be reviewed by a team of lawyers. Some board members saying today during a special meeting that the development agreement is extreme.
And it is. It's very interesting what actually happened here. We have some more video footage to play for you, but in a very short summary.
Can I share one thing though?
Please.
It's interesting. She said it's very extreme, because I'm hearing actually quite the opposite from a lot of legal experts and what have you. Right here, old Disney District Board deals likely, legal experts say. It says here, experts said at least one of those deals, the developmental agreement that locks in Disney Development Authority for 30 years, is a standard contract with which the board would have difficulty finding legal fault. So it's not completely out of this world, what they're trying to do here.
It's not. Developer agreements are very, and to give just some clarity for the viewers at home here, what Disney did, or what I should say the RCID board members did, was they entered into both a restrictive covenant and a developer agreement with Disney. And the restrictive covenant is, I think it echoes a lot of the same things as the developer agreement. Developer agreement is the big one, though, and it basically says, we have the right, Disney does, for like 30 years, to build out the area of the RCID with the highest density and the highest intensity that we so choose. I think it gives them the ability to build 2 minor parks and 1 more theme park for like the next 30 years. That's where the development agreement is at. The restrictive covenant is, you can think of it as almost like a homeowners association, right? Where you had to have a certain grass side, certain trees. Maybe you have an architectural review board that goes over a development project that you might have for your house, right? It's like it has to be consistent with the architecture of the neighborhood, kind of thing, right?
Doesn't Disneyland kind of have that right now? Like something to that effect, where like the buildings around the resort can't build certain heights.
Right.
They can't go beyond a certain height and what have you. Something
That's
similar.
the Disney cone, right? So in Anaheim, this is going back to Walt's era, which is very, very interesting. But Walt, back in the day, while developing Disneyland, there was I guess it was like a hotel chain, like a Marriott or so, who was looking to build a big, huge hotel tower that would look right into the Magic Kingdom, right? And Disney's like, whoa, can't have that because that, destroys our sightlines here. We have to maintain the integrity of the Disneyland kind of theme park enterprise, right? And so he campaigned to have rules established directly around Disneyland in Anaheim that would restrict the height of certain buildings, and they would kind of flare out and go out, right? And that's what the Disney cone is. So if you have a development project that you want to build next to, Disneyland, you're restricted at a certain height because, well, we can't have that visually intrude inside the berm.
Right.
So, yeah, you can think of that restrictive covenant as something quite similar. But that effectively diminishes any authority that this incoming board has, right? So Governor DeSantis's, plan here. He initially said that the RCID would be no more entirely.
Right.
Then that plan morphed
back
into the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. Yeah, he kind of pared that back a little bit, and that now became the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, which is effectively RCID 2.0, but with board members assigned by the governor himself and approved by the Senate. So, well, they thought they were going to have certain powers, and now this developer agreement and those restrictive covenants pretty much strip any power away from this board that they thought they were actually going to have. And you can see this language right here. How long? Well, this is the developer agreement, and you can see here how long this is all good for. I believe it's a little bit lower here. Let me see. Duration. So I don't know. Let me see if I can. Okay. The duration of this agreement shall be 30 years from its effective date, but may be extended by mutual consent of RCID and master developer, being Disney, and subject to a public hearing pursuant to Chapter 163.3229 Florida statutes or through extensions filed pursuant to. You get the idea. So this developer agreement is good for at least 30 years. And the only ones who can break it now, because the RCID no longer exists anymore, is Disney, right? So you are binding this developer agreement to the incoming board, and the board has no mechanism by which to pull back from this developer agreement, as instructed here.
Well, now this doesn't rely on that King Charles clause, then, right? So the 30s.
The covenant does.
The covenant does this. The 30 years, though, is a separate thing.
A separate thing, yes, and that's
So
for
they're
the maximum density portion of this whole thing.
So they're locked into that 30 at the very minimum.
At the very minimum, yeah. And then this is the covenant. So the covenant and how long this will actually last here is under 7.1 here. Term, this declaration shall be deemed effective as of the effective date and continue to be effective in perpetuity. And there's no perpetuity in law, so this is where Disney gets clever. Unless all or certain portions of this provision of this declaration are expressly terminated as provided everywhere herein, provided, however, that if the perpetual terms of this declaration is deemed to violate, quote, the rules against perpetuities or any similar law or rule, this declaration shall continue in effect until 21 years after the death of the last survivor of the descendants of King Charles III, King of England, living as of this date of declaration. So, and it says, I guess the Walt Disney Company can end this as well, I do believe. But that's how they get around, because there is no you can't really say in perpetuity without having something like that in it,
right?
And that's the one they chose. They chose what's called a royal clause, and you'll see this here.
And the royal family, the reason why I believe they have the royal clause, the royal family's descendants are very well documented, so it's an easy kind of measuring tool for this kind of stuff, right?
Yes, effectively, but it's not really seen in the United States. It's seen amongst areas of the British Commonwealth, but not really at the U.S. It goes in here. A royal lives clause is a contract clause which provides that a certain right must be exercised within usually the lifetime plus 21 years of the last living descendant of a monarch who happens to be alive at the time when the contract is made. The clause became part of contractual drafting in response to common law rule developed by the courts known as the rule against perpetuities. And you can see that actually referenced in the actual covenant itself, right? And you can see where the application is. The Royal Lives Clause is a common legal practice in the United Kingdom and other countries of the Commonwealth. It's interesting because the one thing that Wikipedia cites of it being actually used in the United States is the one that we just looked at, which tells you how rare this actually is. And here's the thing about this. Even this kind of has problems, and this is why it's like, did Disney dot all their I's and cross all their T's when it comes to this? Look up the King of England right now. You won't find him because it's the King of the United Kingdom who King Charles rules over. So it's like, there is technically no King Charles III, King of England. Is that one way in which this can actually be broken? I'm not sure. I'm not a legal expert, but it's just little stuff like this, OG, that's like, okay, I mean, is this necessarily as
Ironclad.
ironclad as we are made to be believed.
I have 2 points on that. Actually, one of them, I got to give credit to our boy Disney Glimpses, because Disney Glimpses has been on top of this stuff. He's been on fire with this, right?
He has.
But he actually mentioned the King Charles thing. Actually, he talked to a lawyer about this whole King Charles thing, and what the ramifications might be about that King of England.
Sure.
And he said, this is from what I saw from a lawyer. He says, some managing partner at a New York law firm is docking the pay of an associate who hasn't slept since January 1st for having missed that point. Very nice catch. Fortunately, the mistake is only in a contingent provision that comes into play only if one of the most difficult to understand of all legal arcana becomes relevant. Even if it came down to it, the error is so esoteric and minor that even if it came down to it, any judge worth his salt would enforce the contract.
And that is true. So the other provision as provided by in the covenant clause would be, I believe it's years after the Walt Disney Company itself would have banned the district.
Right.
So that's it's either or. But to me, here's the thing. It just speaks to, I guess, how ironclad these things are. And yes, I do agree with you. Any judge worth his salt would, it's irrelevant, right? But again, I mean, if you're
asking a Californian who's the president, who's your president, you say Biden, even though technically it's not just the president of California, it's president of the other 49 states. Same idea with England. Like, yes, he's the king of Wales, but they single England out. So technically it's right, but it's kind of like that omission that might be.
Well, and these technicalities are going to come into play here when this board is probably going to be looking into poke holes into this argument that these contracts are legally binding. So that's the kind of thing that has me a little bit like, this seems to be hastily done. Is this you mentioned before, OG, is this as ironclad as we are led to believe? But to give a little bit more context for this as well, let's go to, let's see. Mickey Views. And Mickey Views kind of has the reaction of the board, and yeah, they're stunned, and we'll get into that as well.
Well, speaking of rushing things through, they seem pretty unprepared for this, huh?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Definitely unprepared for sure.
And now we actually have the footage from yesterday's meeting of Reedy Creek, so we can better understand what exactly happened and what exactly Disney did. To start here, I'll let the new board's special counsel tell you what they discovered in the troubling documents that they were first emailed on St. Patrick's Day.
Relevant to these functions and duties of the board and to the district is something shocking that Fishbeck Dominic learned recently about what Disney and the district were doing in January and February of this year before the new Enabling Act became law. On Friday, March 17th, around 8:30 at night, Mr. Arterman and I received an email from the district containing 4 agreements, one of which was a development agreement that was dated February 8th, 2023. And that development agreement is between Disney and the district. Specifically, what does the development agreement contain? What does it purport to do? Well, it purports to grant Disney a vested right and own.
And you can see right there just some of the development agreement details right there, and what they're able to do now as part of this. So they're essentially, Disney has ensured that there will be no hindrance in any of its long-term plans by this board. It's very interesting.
Ownership and control of the maximum densities and intensities of uses under the comprehensive plan for the entire district, not just for Disney's properties. It appears that the entitlements, maximum entitlements in the comprehensive plan and the land development code for the entire district are the same level of maximum densities and intensities granted to Disney in the development agreement.
So the densities and intensities is what he's talking about there. Densities is basically, how full you can actually fill a parcel. Intensities is how tall you can actually make that structure. So it's maximum throughout. There is no there's nothing where this board can enact some environmental report. Let's say the Anaheim board has instructed for Disneyland back in California, right? There's an environmental impact report which says like, okay, before you build this structure, you have to be, how much traffic will actually bring to the area, right? Can you actually have that many people in that building without parking and all that kind of stuff? That doesn't apply here. So that's kind of what that intensities and densities language is outlining right here. I'm going to skip forward a little bit here.
That is a decision that is made.
Right. And here we
into law. The new Disney were.
Let me see if I can get to it because he has some additional comments from the board. Here we go.
Sign off on any permit.
Essentially becomes the planning department for the district.
Assigns to Disney the maximum intensities and densities allowed district-wide to just Disney, and it lets Disney control where those densities and intensities can be allocated district-wide, including on Disney's property.
So Disney essentially becomes the planning department for the district.
That's a fair way of saying it.
So we give governmental power to Disney.
That's what it appears, yes.
So the board, they got.
Okay, and that's a pretty big distinction right there, and something I wanted to touch on a little bit, because the whole idea of the RCID was to set up a governing body that had these exclusive rights to it, right? Disney themselves couldn't actually have these rights. You couldn't actually vest a private company with the developer rights that a governing body like the RCID had. So that's why the RCID was even set up to begin with. With transferring this authority over to Disney, for one, that creates a connection between the RCID and Disney that there was previously not a connection. There was no previous connection made there. There was a layer of autonomy that separated the two entities. Now they're linked, and that has implications for it. But I think there's also problems with a private entity like Disney having this kind of authority as vested to it by the legislature out there in Tallahassee. There's some very intricate legal theories and legal arguments that can be made on this front. And honestly, on those, a judge will have to decide, which is also pretty tricky. But OG, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's funny because here's my overall thoughts on it. I think that I'll be honest with you. I supported Ron DeSantis during the lockdowns. I think he handled that beautifully. I think he did a very good job at how he kind of managed that, much better than California. And I have multiple videos on that. I mean, you can check it out. Multiple videos on that.
Agreed.
I think on this particular situation with the Reedy Creek thing, it looked like it was kind of rushed from day one. And it's kind of showing, to be quite honest with you. Look, like you said earlier, Dre, there were big plans for this to dissolve, the district, and it was much more ambitious when he sold it to everybody initially. And basically what we got was, okay, a name change and then handpick board members, right?
Yep.
Very much minimized from what it was before.
Very much so.
So it's like now you have this thing where Disney passes this. Here I got the dates here, and I know we'll talk about it here. But it said on February 8th, the RCID and Disney files the agreement, right? Mm-hmm. February 9th, the bill passes legislature.
Yes.
Right? And then February 27th, DeSantis signs the bill.
Yes.
Okay. So you have, like 2 weeks between the 9th and the 27th. Now, why wasn't DeSantis and his board more privy to this? It was out in the open. I mean, it was public. It was public information that this thing occurred on the 9th.
Sure.
The 8th, I'm sorry. Between the agreement occurred on the 8th. So between the 9th when it passed the legislature and when it hit DeSantis's desk, why wasn't anything done exactly to maybe address it, maybe revisit the legislation that they just passed? Maybe they can change. Why wasn't anything done in those 2 weeks?
Well, one of the big reasons why, and Disney knew this, which is why this kind of good faith, bad faith comes in. But Disney waited until the very last moment in order to actually pass these covenants and agreements that basically had all of the RCID governing board power transferred over to Disney. They waited until the very last moment until a vote was actually exercised by Tallahassee. At that point, Ron DeSantis would have to call another special session of Congress in order to amend any of these things before it actually hit his desk.
But isn't he going to have to isn't he going to have to make moves anyway now? Because, I mean, yeah, he's going to have to do extra in those 2 weeks because it already passed, but he's still going to have to do that now. So what's the difference?
I think the difference being that I think they wanted to wait for a regular session before actually a regular section of Congress before actually calling these things up.
In hindsight, was that a smart idea, you think, though, with the optics? And...
So here's the thing. At that point, I think themselves, it's like, okay, well, we already passed this. Let's get this approved. Let's handle it when this thing actually comes up. When this thing might come up. I don't really buy the idea that DeSantis or the legislative body out there in Tallahassee understood what was going on here. I think they Disney kind of just rushed it through, and again, right before there was a vote to be held on the on this RCID, and they knew, Disney very well knew what DeSantis was going to do leading up to that. They have lobbyists in Tallahassee, right? They're talking back and forth there. They undercut it. And again, a day before. Now, what makes that crucial is that's the kind of, I think, the bad faith argument that these board members might employ. To give people some clarity on this as well, the board members have decided that they're going to take this up in the courts. And I guess Governor DeSantis has put out a statement saying that they support the actions of the board members to actually do that, right? So this is going to be handled, these specific clauses, the covenant and the agreement, they're going to be handled by a judge. And so a couple things with that. One, here's the interesting thing. Okay. This is where it gets into the politics, right? And we try to stay out of it when it's not appropriate, but it sometimes, right? You just have to include those things in order to be accurate, right?
Let's be completely honest. This whole move was made because of politics. Absolutely. So it's essential to the story.
It is, and you have to bring it in now because that's where it's from, right? Okay. All right. When 45 was in office, right, he filled a number of roles for that were open, right? Judicial appointments that were open, as all presidents do, right? So when there's an opening, a president will nominate somebody, and the Senate will approve it, and there you go, boom. Okay. All of those judicial appointments that 45 actually made back when he was president were all from the Federalist Society, right? They were all Federalist Society judges. Okay. Many of the judges in Florida are Federalist Society members as well, right? There's like a covenant between all of them. Do you know who one of the biggest Federalist Society members is?
Who?
Well, go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you see where he's speaking right now, Mr. Governor Ron DeSantis? He's speaking at a Federalist Society conference, right? Do you see where he's actually speaking? And where this Federal Society conference is actually taking place?
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting, right? So,
and when was this? Well, this is February of last year. Okay.
February of last year, right? And he's still a Federal Society member and still making appointments for Federal Society judges, as actually outlined here. This is why DeSantis has been so fortunate in court. Okay? He has a lot of pull with the courts themselves, right? And so I'm sure they're going to do some venue switching and all kinds of stuff in order to get it in front of a judge that is, one, anti-Disney, and two, pro-DeSantis.
Now, counter argument though.
Sure.
And recently, it was in November. He wasn't able to do any of that. The judge blocked Florida's Stop Woke Act pushed by DeSantis. This was a Tallahassee judge.
Yeah.
So, yes, he could, in theory, technically try to get the favorable judge. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, though, how far does that go? We saw it didn't really help him out too much in November. And if Disney does have an ironclad case to be made here, are these judges willing to bend the law for this guy for his little woke war with Disney? That's a question. I mean, you could be biased, but that doesn't mean you have to act on your bias. And does it? I think that there's a level of shadiness that some of these judges might not cross if it looks like Disney has an airtight situation. Is all I'm saying. You know what I'm saying?
I don't see it. I don't see it. And look, listen. He'll appeal that, right? And look at where he's making his appointments. Okay? It only goes up so far. That's the thing.
Well, assuming it doesn't go federal, then we have a whole other
goes
situation.
To the Supreme Court. I doubt they would take up this case, to be honest with you. I really doubt it. I mean, there are so many cases that they should be taking up that they just haven't. And so that leaves them with the final ruling of either the Fifth Circuit, Sixth Circuit, or the respective Supreme Courts where they come from. They're not going to take this case up. It's going to end in a Florida Supreme Court. And here's the thing about this, OG. This is only one branch of government, right? This is only one avenue that could be employed and is probably going to be exclusively employed by the board members themselves. There's still two other branches, right? You have the executive branch and the legislative branch. The legislative can do pretty much whatever it wants to do, right? The powers of this developer agreement or this restrictive covenant are only granted because the legislative branch allows them to actually occur in the first place. We, at this point, I mean, here's the thing. DeSantis could have eradicated the RCID. I understand that people bring up the bond thing and all that kind of stuff. Look, at worst, right? It wouldn't have been absorbed by the Osceola Orange counties. It would have been absorbed by the state of Florida, right? And you're talking about like what, $1 billion? I understand it might hurt their credit rating and all that kind of stuff, but $1 billion as festooned on by the taxpayers, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket, right? I mean,
so why didn't he then initially? If he could, if there was logistically no issue really holding him back, why didn't he do it from jump? In your opinion?
My opinion, I think they wanted to take the least, the route of least resistance as possible, right? Upset the status quo as little as possible, because there was already some pushback, emanating from within Tallahassee on this whole thing, with politicians seeing what it was, right? So it's like, okay, well, we're gonna take like a lighthearted, just a light approach. Get myself a political win right here. The board will have certain powers, but they'll also have certain restrictions. Disney will still get basically what they want. The tax structure might change as by the board and so forth. There might be a little bit more of a back and forth, and it won't be necessarily a rubber stamp that the RCID was for Disney before. But hey, you know what? I get the win. I move on. Here's the issue now. See, that was only a pinky that was applied there in terms of the whole body of powers that could have befallen the RCID or this district right now, right? And yes, Disney countered, but again, that's only a pinky that was applied. What I'm saying is that DeSantis applied the lightest touch he possibly could, and even though there is pushback on that alone, there's still a great multitude of other things that they could have done. And I mean, you've seen the headlines surrounding this, right, OG?
I mean, even the conservative sites like Washington Examiner,
Right,
they're dragging them through the coals.
Dragging them to the coals. Washington Post, for example, right? Got it right here. Disney's move may rob DeSantis of his 2024 calling card. DeSantis introduced his takeover of the board that oversees Disney by saying, quote, there's a new sheriff in town, but it turns out the old sheriff had something to say about that. And it goes on right here. Even from other candidates in the presidential race for 2024 are talking about this. Don't worry, 45's comments are coming, I can assure you.
Oh, yeah.
But
he's a little busy right now, but he'll get to it.
He'll get to it. Just don't even worry about that. He'll get to it right there. And we've actually had a statement come out from his campaign even on it, which we'll get to in a moment. One of the few declared Republican 2024 candidates, Vivek Ramaswamy, I believe.
Yeah.
Hit DeSantis on Wednesday by suggesting the news indicates his Disney campaign was mostly a public relations effort. Quote, here's what happens when a career politician meets a woke corporation. They strike a deal and both sides win. Ramaswamy said in a tweet, the politician gets to do the press conference and the company gets to do exactly what it wants. Okay? And then here, let me see if I can find it here. This is already blown up in the... In political circles here.
Oh, it's crazy.
Here we go. Ouch. Real Donald Trump campaign staffer just now, quote, President Trump wrote Art of the Deal and brokered Middle East peace. Ron DeSantis just got out-negotiated by Mickey Mouse.
Well, and here's the problem with this. This is the problem with this. And this is why I said earlier that I think DeSantis sort of has been sloppy from the jump, from day one. And that's why you saw him backpedal, he and all that stuff. The issue with this whole move is that it was a political move from day one, and they were so focused on the politics of it and the optics of it that they weren't paying attention though. Disney was smartly so keeping their head down and doing all this other stuff and doing this bill on the 8th.
Sure.
They were keeping their head down doing their homework. And DeSantis was like, yeah, I won. Yeah. It was like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. You're taking the eye off the ball because you're so worried about the optics of it that you lost the sight of the meat and potatoes of the policy. And that's why they dropped the ball, in my opinion, is because he was too focused on the political side of this whole thing. And I think it hurt him. I really, really do.
I do, but here's the thing. Okay, and this is why, I mean, we said it at the time. We said, hey, look, listen, I don't want to say this was a win for Disney, but it could have been a lot worse than it was, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's thrown out completely at the table on because of a couple of reasons. One is, not even just Ron DeSantis is made to look like a fool here. The board is made to look like fools. The legislative branch out there in Tallahassee has been made to look like complete fools, right? So there's far more political willpower, let's say, that's just been festooned into the sails of the legislature to go even further than they were before. And, well, DeSantis himself... This is very interesting. We're talking about this previously, OG. Remember, we had talked about, I believe on our Rumble exclusive, we talked about a deal that was brokered between 45 and DeSantis at one point, right? And the deal was DeSantis stays out of the actual presidential race, and for that, DeSantis becomes 45's VP nomination for a White House bid in 2024. Okay. That deal was broken. And the reason why, and we started seeing rumblings of this going all the way back into actually the 2022 primaries when DeSantis endorsed a candidate that was not a 45 fan, to put it mildly, right? And 45 at the time said, big mistake. That was kind of the end of that deal. That was hatched between the two sides. And the reason why that occurred is DeSantis has gotten some horrible advice, let's say.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, from figures that are, let's say,
establishment
figures that are undesirable now.
Kind of swampy.
Kind of swampy, right? The Bush wing of the Republican Party, the Romneys, the McCains, the Ryans, right? The people who have actually lost a lot of power recently, which is very, very interesting, and want to see 45 go away entirely. So they have been trying to get DeSantis to actually run. It looks like he will be. But the reason why DeSantis changed his tune, because he was telling his donors at the time, I'm not going to run against 45 if he decides to run. I'm just not going to do it. It's not going to happen, right?
Right.
Why the change in tune? Well, the change in tune comes from he had certain assurances that Trump, or 45, was going to go down.
Right. Indictment, basically.
Right. The indictment, right? And here's the thing. On the eve of that indictment, that's when this news actually breaks.
Right.
I don't think there's... I don't think that's a coincidence, and we'll get into other theories and where that might have been, right? But I tell you all of this because DeSantis is running. He just is.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be, but he is. And he's getting bad advice for that. Because of that. And now he's going to be, I think, politically motivated to right this wrong. I think he's going to use the Walt Disney Company to launch himself into the national sphere, and then maybe, as Jay put it when we were talking post-show yesterday, transition into politics that are a lot more, let's say, important to
everybody, except Florida.
To everybody, to as wide as gambit as possible. But I think he's going to use Disney to actually do that. So that's why, as a Disney fan, I'm really, really concerned, because Disney has basically given DeSantis all of the political ammo he needs to actually launch a campaign on the national stage in 2024.
Here's the issue with that, though, and we both agreed in a video recently that DeSantis won the Reedy Creek battle, right? Up until a few days ago, he won. I mean, everyone was in agreement of that, the media, everybody, political circles, you name it.
Sure.
From his perspective, I think the last thing you want to do is reopen something that's already marked as a win for you and relitigate something that was a win just 2 weeks ago for you. Now, look, it might pan out that he does something dramatic with the mouse and really kneecaps the hell out of Disney, but he's going to look like a maniac. Is that going to necessarily make him look good on a national stage? How far does he go with this? And does it look good? Does it play well optically, right? It's also a risk if he's not successful. Look, there's no guarantees here. Even his board member, Bridget over here, let me go ahead and bring this up real quick.
Please.
The arrogance of Disney continues. Now, mind you, this is a board member on the oversight board, okay?
Correct.
From ignoring parents and allowing radicals to bleep our children, I don't want to say it on YouTube,
right,
to now ignoring Florida taxpayers by sneaking in a last-minute sweetheart development agreement, I'm sorry. Disney has once again overplayed their hand in Florida. We won't stand for this. We won't back down. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's the rub. If unlawful actions were taken, this development agreement will be nullified. It doesn't sound like she's going to unleash the Kraken. It doesn't sound like you ain't seen nothing yet. It sounds like they're depending on Disney breaking the law to do anything on this thing.
That's true, but that's only going the route of the judiciary branch. Remember, there are powers exclusive to the executive and to the legislative. See, Bridget's saying, yeah, if unlawful actions were taken,
right,
this agreement will be nullified. They're still looking into it. I believe they actually put in a public records request to Disney saying, actually, I might have have it right here. Goes into a little bit of it. Give me a second, guys. Hang on.
Sure.
But this, what this basically amounts to is they're pursuing their options as limited to them by the board, right? They're technically not members of the executive branch. But here we go, right here. Let me see if I can get them. Oh, great. That's fantastic. You know, when you download something on Twitter and the type of file it is changes.
Oh, I freaking hate it.
Come on, Elon. Let's get something going here. Okay, here we go. Got it right here. So this was a letter that on behalf of the board members was given to Disney. To whom it may concern, this email serves as a public records request under Florida law. Please provide copies of all emails, text messages, and other correspondence from or to employees, board members, or other affiliates of the Reedy Creek Improvement District regarding the following topic: documents discussing agreements, covenants, or similar documents approved or considered by the Board of Supervisors on February 8th, 2023. Please limit your search to documents discussing an intention or goal of circumventing, avoiding, frustrating, mitigating, or otherwise attempting to avoid the effects of anticipated actions by the Florida governor and Florida legislature. If you believe that individuals no longer affiliated with the Reedy Creek Improvement District may possess responsive public records that are not in your custody or control, please advise how the Attorney General's office may be of assistance. So that's the Office of the Attorney General. That's just a public records request right there. That's not a subpoena. No. But you can see where it could turn into a subpoena very, very quickly, right? And because there is now this level of separation that's now been, it's now been connected, connecting the RCID or the district to Disney in a way that it had not been before. Now that can start up all kinds of legal inquiry by the governor's office that couldn't otherwise take place.
But couldn't the opposite be said about Disney, looking into the dealings about the true motivations behind this whole thing? And maybe Disney's legal team tries to get documents about emails or whatever. I mean, couldn't that work both ways?
They would have
to
they'd have to file a lawsuit and attempt to be granted discovery.
Right.
It could, right? But I just don't see them doing it. I mean, that gets messy very, very fast. Ideally for Disney, that's why they were so silent about it, because they didn't want to create any connection point between them. Now there is a connection point in which the governor can leverage against Disney. Yes, possibly that could go against them. But like I said, the courts in Florida, I don't care if you talk about state or federal. I will admit, though, that Disney's chances are better federal, which you better believe there's going to probably be a change of venue. Request applied to whatever lawsuit comes their way. It doesn't matter. They're all in the governor's pocket. This is why the governor has been so successful when it comes to cases, whether it be established law or law theory, as it worked out in the COVID context and otherwise. This is why he's been so successful. This is not a fight they can win. That's what I'm saying. At least in the judiciary, and then you have two more branches to contend with potentially.
Yeah. It's just you're opening up a can of worms, though, and Disney. It seems like Disney wanted to be in this position for doing it in the first place. Like we say, like, oh well, now Disney's direct.
Yes, and what OG was saying right there, this does seem to be that Disney did want to be in this fight at a certain point. And my only retort to that will be, is that an act of confidence or an act of hubris? OG, go ahead and complete your point.
I do apologize. I had a little tech difficulties. No, but they did this move knowing that they are more tied to this. So it seems like, in my opinion, that this is exactly where Disney wanted to be. For whatever reason, they wanted to have this direct, I mean, I don't know.
I just don't know where it comes from, OG. Is this hubris or is this confidence? To me, it seems like hubris. To me, it seems, we really run this town, and we're gonna keep this town away from any new sheriffs that might actually come into it. For me, it's like, this is the government you are talking about here, and they only unleashed a little power against you before. Who's to say what they'll do now when motivated? Go ahead, OG.
Here's the thing, too, though. I would agree with the hubris thing if all the legal experts and everyone in political circles was saying Disney's done. And Disney was the one saying, no, we got this. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I see very few people siding with DeSantis' legal chances here. I mean, a lot of conservative websites, a lot of legal experts, outside of a handful of people that are like really pro DeSantis and anti-Disney, you don't see too many people out there going, yeah, DeSantis has this in the bag. Why is that if it's just Disney being hubris?
Well, I'll play you the comments of somebody who has been on the ground before. This comes to us from Andrew from Legal Mindset.
Okay.
Who is supposed to be on VR's channel
right now.
Soon,
I think.
Actually, yeah,
Right?
yeah. Talking about this, right? And so I'm sure he'll provide maybe a little bit more clarity to his comments here. But this is really important to kind of go over. Look, listen. It's important to understand that is Legal Mindset biased against Disney? Yes, he is, right? He calls him the rat in this video. He has been involved in cases that have gone against the rat or the mouse before, specifically when it comes to Celebration, right? And that whole debacle. There were certain rights that the residents of Celebration were looking to get from Disney, and he participated in providing legal counsel to those residents. So there was a, let's say, adversarial relationship between him and Disney at that time, which amounted to the full annexation of Celebration at a certain point. He also worked for Universal to try to get the same sweetheart deal that Disney got with the Reedy Creek Improvement District for themselves. And obviously, the legislative at that time was like, no, thank you. So that. Okay, just to give you some background here. So if you hear some language from him, that's where it's coming from, right? But this guy has done more work in this area of law, specifically dealing with Orlando, than anybody else. So look, he could be wrong. I'm not saying that he's 100% right. I understand our fellow Disney Glimpses has had problem with his analysis and so forth, right? But this is what somebody who is one of the leading experts in this field is saying about it, okay? So we'll play a little bit of it.
Over here, and we'll show you the actual statutes related to development agreements, which is 163.3233, which is local laws and policies governing a development agreement. Well, if you've enacted a development agreement, right, and you've gone and entered into this, well, does that mean that the local government's laws and policies don't apply? Well, no. There's actually certain conditions upon which they can apply. So if the local government, i.e. the new Central Florida Tourism Board, holds a simple public meeting and finds any of the following, then that development agreement is null and void. It's gone forever. So let's see all of the things they could find here, and any of which would allow the Central Florida Tourism District would allow them to override those provisions and override that secret Disney power grab. So if, let's say, that agreement that was enacted in bad faith is in conflict with laws and policies that exist regarding development agreements, and if it's in any way preventing the development of land, well, you might find that it's in conflict with some existing policies or perhaps some new policies. Also, you can have right here that under D, and I'm skipping over B and C because public health, safety, welfare, that's kind of ambiguous. If you specifically anticipate or provide for exceptions, okay, that's there. But going down to D, and then we'll get to E. If we go down to D, we see if the local government demonstrates substantial changes that have occurred in pertinent conditions existing at the time of approval of the development agreement, hold the phone. You know what's a pertinent change between when this was enacted in February and now? Let's see. How about turning the entire power over? How about the entire board flipping? How about the scam being up? The rat has been run out of town.
I would argue that the bigger change would be the abolishment of the RCID into now the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. That's probably the biggest change that's occurred with this specific district itself. It also says development agreement is based on substantially inaccurate information supplied to the developer. Legal Mindset says that potentially inaccurate information was provided. So that could be a clause. If they find it, who knows if they will. This section does not abrogate any rights that may vest pursuant to common law. The power vested to the board comes from the legislative. This is a legislative created body. That's why it's a state entity, right? Who knows what the legislature is actually going to do? to right this wrong somehow, or to go even further than what they did before. I mean, who's to stop the legislative branch from actually saying or enacting a new tax levied against Disney for the length of this development agreement? Hey, you want to have this development agreement? Fine. You're going to have to pay for this power, 50% tax. Who's to stop them from doing that? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that Legal Mindset doesn't think that like Disney's team of lawyers didn't think that through. It slipped through the cracks. Is that what he's suggesting?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, our friend Disney Glimpses says here in regards to this, and
please,
I'll read it, and then because our boy Disney Glimpses is phenomenal, by the way.
Oh, I know. He's been doing a lot of work on here. We tried to get him on the show, by the way, because it was like, brother,
great.
you've been doing a lot of stuff on this. We got to have you. But I'm glad that you're bringing up his comments because I do think they are very relevant to this conversation.
Yeah. No, I told him I would because he wasn't able to come on. So. But he said there's no point to development agreements if that section meant a change in government, something that happens every few years. Government changes are normal and routine. To suggest that they all qualify to null and void a developer agreement is complete nonsense. Does he not have a point here?
I believe it'd be the government of the district, not necessarily the government of the state. Because that's where that development agreement emanates from. It's not from the state or the county. It's from the actual the government of the RCID itself. See, that's the you have to go back to the reason why the RCID was established in the first place, right? Only a government entity could have those powers. That's why people said, "Oh, Disney has their own government." Yeah, they did. It was the RCID. That government has now changed. So I think that's what Legal Mindset is actually talking about here. But it's very, very interesting because, like you said, certain folks have, they take umbrage with the fact that these things could have holes poked in them so much so that it would render these contracts null and void. Again, this is going to have to be worked out in the courts. And like I said, that's DeSantis's playing field, essentially.
Yeah, it is, but it's not. It's never 100%. Like we saw with the Stop Woke bill. You just never know.
And he'll appeal it, and I'm sure he'll win. Because look, I mean, here's the thing: he's appointed people on the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
it's interesting because.
How long does this thing get dragged out then? Like, what do you think? Do you think this will go on for years? Because DeSantis doesn't have years. I mean, his reputation was badly damaged.
You could get these judgments expedited, right? And it'd be up to jurisprudence to actually decide whether or not these things actually get expedited. I think they might, but that's the thing. The legal fight might take years. The legislative can act as soon as their next session comes up. So that's the thing, right? I don't think DeSantis is going to be looking. He's supportive, obviously, of the board's efforts, but I don't think he's going to be, putting all his eggs into the judicial basket. I think it's going to be legislative. Insider writes this: Florida insiders react with shock, amusement, and dread after Disney outmaneuvers DeSantis to keep most of its power. This is by Kimberly Leonard, but they get somebody on the record here that I think is interesting. Let's see, right about here. Quote, "Who knows what they might come up with creatively to make Disney's life miserable." Aubrey Jewett, a political science professor at the University of Central Florida who co-authored the book Politics in Florida, told Insider, "If I have seen anything from this governor and the Republican legislature, it's that they go after perceived enemies, and they go after them in a big way." He continued, "I won't be surprised if other things happen." And this basically, the article repeats this almost ad nauseum, but that's a pretty good distillation of what it's saying. There's gonna be retribution for this.
Oh, there will be. He'll make an attempt. I just don't know how big it's gonna be. And here's the other thing too. And oh my God, my conservative subscribers are not gonna like to hear this, but please, I gotta be 100% honest. I gotta be. There are a lot of moments in the conservative movement in conservative circles right now of over-promising, under-delivering. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here with DeSantis, but we've seen Release the Kraken with Sidney Powell, right? The whole Trump 2020 thing. That was, fizzled out. The red wave, that was, I understand that they did get a lot of seats with, I think, teacher boards and what have you, school boards or what have you. Okay, but it wasn't the red wave.
And they also won the House.
That's fair. That's fair. But it wasn't the wave that we were being sold.
Correct.
Even this Carrie Lake thing, it's just, there's a lot of over-promising and under-delivering. And I feel like this whole you ain't seen nothing yet, this kind of bravado is sort of more of the same that we see from the conservative circles, where it's like a lot of this. I mean, look, we've even seen that with DeSantis when he was promising to dissolve the whole thing, and it turned out to be a name change and a board swap.
Correct.
So it's like, how do we know that this is going to be? Yeah, we hear all the fear monger, like, oh man, they're going to stick it to him. Are they though, or is this more like kind of like just a lot of noise? We'll see.
Well, a couple things on that. I think even that is beginning to change, because I think the Republicans are finding out we actually have to deliver something.
Right.
But even in the case of Carrie Lake, she's had some victories in court that were quite surprising. Even with a Arizona Supreme Court, which is, notoriously biased. I'll say that. But look at these.
So wait, you mean you can win even if the court's biased? Oh, that's good news for Disney in Florida.
You can. That's the thing though. I just understand what's going on here. Okay. Go ahead and look at these polls right here.
Yeah.
All right. You'll see January, where DeSantis in 45 was, right? DeSantis was up +5. This is January, right?
Wow.
February, 45 was up by 11. March, 45 was up by 25 against DeSantis. That's a 30-point swing towards Trump, right?
We do have some audio from Trump in regard to that March poll number.
Please.
Because now there's a new sheriff in town.
There we go.
There we go. Oh yeah, that's very accurate right there. That's good stuff there. And again, recorded a similar finding by Yahoo or YouGov, B+ or whatever. You can see 31-point swing towards Trump since December 5th. Okay. This is DeSantis' only play. So that's the worry here. That's the only thing he's got. He's going to be desperate to get a win, not just on a Floridian stage, but on a national stage. And I think this has given him just a complete boost in order to do that. He has no other options. That's the thing. He's just not trending in the right direction. And this indictment against 45 will rally that whole base around him. He will improve in a similar way that we saw with the Mar-a-Lago raid. This is DeSantis. He has to do this at this time. He just does. And I think he's going to take it to Disney. And I just don't know where it's going to stop. I don't know where.
And that's an issue, though. If he goes too far, it looks like a crazy person, though. Like, you can't.
Optics thrown out the window. He's down 30 points. That's the problem. I mean, who knows what he's gonna do? That's the thing, OG. Like you said, people had problems with what DeSantis did even before. Now he's been made to look like a fool. He has to deliver on this. He has to, or else he has no chance.
Oh yeah, no, and I told you they're reopening a win for him. This was a win 2 weeks ago for him. This was done, and it would be like having a debate, a presidential debate, and one of the candidates they record it, right, and one of the candidates crushes their opponent, and then they say, you know what, you guys have to do the debate all over again. I guess I didn't put film in the reel or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, shit, I won that debate. Now I got to redo it. Well, see, that sucks when you're the winner because you already had that win in your column. He had that win in his column. And now he's got to redo the whole thing basically again. And it might not turn out the same way. That's a huge risk. And it's the only thing he's got. You're right. I agree with you. It's this Hail Mary. He's got to land that thing. And if he doesn't, it's bad news bears for DeSantis. I'll tell you that.
True. Very true. I just don't think he's going to let that happen. It's a state-created entity. It's what the RCID or the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District is. It's a state-created entity. It's has powers vested to it by the state itself.
Yeah.
And everybody involved in that process has been made to look like idiots.
Oh yeah. Well, even the guy, I think it was a Ron Perry guy who said you can catch gay from tap water. I mean, let's be honest. They didn't exactly put the A squad on this board, right? I mean,
I mean that's fair. That's fair. That's very, very true. Look, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
I'm just messing.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, you're right. I mean, let's be honest. Some of these board members should be made to look like idiots for comments that not only they've included here, but for comments they've included in other places, right?
Yeah.
But motivation is the master of reason, not the other way around, right?
Right.
Reason's not the master of motivation. If you want to change your reasoning, you change your motivation. DeSantis' motivation is to get the White House, right?
Yeah.
Is to stick it to Disney now that he's been made to look like a fool. That motivation will override his reason. That's why it just doesn't matter. The optics don't matter anymore. I think he's going to go out for blood. And as a Disney fan, I'm very concerned because he only launched, like you said, OG, he made big promises before and then capitulated. I mean, I was getting reports back from Tallahassee from people who actually know people in the legislature who are saying, "Oh yeah, they could have done this with the mutual bonds. They could have done that. They could have gone further." They decided not to. Now that whole thing, like you said, gets relitigated once again, even with more momentum and more political will to go even further. That's the kind of scary thing right now. Again, what Disney did right here, savvy move.
Oh, yeah.
If there's no retribution. But I think it's single step thinking.
Or if the retribution is minimal, where it doesn't really, move the needle. And I think Disney feels like it is, like that's the case. But we'll see. Look, I'll be real. Like I'm not an attorney. I know it's a shock to the audience. I am not a lawyer. I'm not, I don't know what possible routes they take or whatever. DeSantis, he might be able. Look, we might revisit this in 2 weeks, and I might say, you know what, Dre, you're absolutely right. He absolutely destroyed and kneecapped the mouse, right? Mm-hmm. I just don't know. I just don't feel like that's the case. I don't think here's where I stand right now with it. I don't think that what is currently set with Disney is going to stand as is, but I do think that the DeSantis crowd is going to be disappointed by the response. I do not think it's going to be as nuclear as people might want in that camp. Again, I could be wrong. That's my feeling on it, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. Well, I will concur with you. I don't think it's going to be as nuclear as maybe that base wants it to be. But I do think it's going to be more than Disney was going to incur, with the legislation as passed in February. So that's, I guess that's my thing right now. Is this was litigated out. This was done. The fact that Disney would want to go to a round two in this way. I understand they passed an insurance policy for themselves, and that's great. That's awesome. That's probably what they as shareholders, what you could expect to do. Yeah, go ahead.
And that's the 30-year thing that you're referring to, right? The insurance policy, from my
No.
understanding.
I mean, just both, all the agreements.
Okay.
It's a de facto insurance policy to preserve their power as it exists within Reedy Creek or within themselves on property. And again, they did what I think a corporation would be expected to do in this situation, right? Preserve all the power that they possibly can. The issue is this isn't Disney, going up against, let's say, some people who are selling copywritten or counterfeit merchandise, right? We heard about that case. Did you see the stack of papers that guy got? It was about this tall, right? Just to have an attorney on retainer to just read every single line, not even interpret every single line, but read every single line.
It's crazy.
It would cost you tens of thousands of dollars just for that alone, right? But hey, you know what? It's some mom and pop outlet on Etsy or whatever.
Yeah.
We can crush them. The government as it exists in Florida is not them. This is the powers that exist in Florida are sweeping. I don't necessarily think that Disney understands what just took place here. and understands the full repercussions of what could happen against them, right? Like I said, what's to stop them from the legislative out there in Tallahassee to say, 50% tax. You want to have this? Fine. But we're just going to tax the hell out of you. There's nothing to stop them from doing that. What's to stop DeSantis from starting a criminal inquiry into the dealings between RCID and Disney? There's nothing to stop him from doing that. What's to stop the judiciary, other than what they're bound to by the black robes that they wear, from ruling in DeSantis' favor throughout? I mean, we've seen multiple cases go up against, brought forward to judges where they've been completely biased in their actual decision making. And they have a loyalty to DeSantis, many of them. Yeah. So it's just like, here's the thing: it's you're going to get on multiple fronts now, and I just don't know if Disney understands what it's going to be in for here.
Yeah, and I don't know how far he can go without the public going, this is ridiculous. You're using taxpayer money to basically fight with this giant corporation. I think this fight with Disney only has so much steam. I think And look, Ron DeSantis is losing political capital by the day. There's less and less political capital. I understand that that's motivating him,
He's a quarter mouse. He's a quarter mouse. You just don't know what he's going to do.
You don't know what he's going to do, but at the same time, you don't want to go to that well too many times. And the public is like, look, I can't afford my rent. I got to put food on the table,
Agreed.
The economy. And then he's dicking around with Magic Kingdom.
Advice, though. He's getting bad advice.
He's getting bad advice. And Trump, I think, is going to rail him on this. The staffer already did. But I mean, this is going to be a thing. He can't even handle Mickey Mouse. How's he going to run the country?
Yeah, how is he going to work out a trade deal with China or peace negotiations in the Middle East or any number of things, right? It's just, it's
crazy.
This is a mess. This is an absolute mess, and they're going to be feeling it, I think, from all three branches. Here's the interesting thing about their legal case, by the way. The board, the board will finance this case against Disney with RCID money.
Right. Which is...
So Disney's footing the bill for legal action against them, which is very interesting. But go ahead, OG.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. Look, could he do this? Could he do that? Could he go to the extreme? Yeah, maybe he could, but I just don't know if he's there. And I feel like he's already been distancing himself. He did an interview since this whole thing came out, and he spent like 35 seconds on that whole topic, where before he'd go on and on and on about Disney. I don't know if DeSantis himself is sold on the Disney thing being a national issue. I just don't know. But we'll see. We'll see how it all pans out. And the great thing is for us as content creators is it's going to feed material for us for a long time, because this story is far from done. Speaking of far from done, though, there is one thing, though, too. We talk about reopening this thing. Mm-hmm. In a way, though, and we've talked about it, too, on the channel quite a bit, it was never really over for Disney, though, was it? I mean, DeSantis said to buckle up. Remember that whole thing?
Right.
I think the board, I think he was going to really kind of browbeat Disney. I think his board wasn't done with Disney. I think that there was more to come, regardless of this move. And maybe Disney understood that and said, hey, if he's going to give us shit anyway, we might as well throw the punch, you know what I'm saying, and actually fight back. Sometimes that's what it takes, let the other side know, hey, we're not going to bend over. We're going to throw punches right back. I don't know. Maybe Disney had that mindset where that was a little bit of a deterrent. Who knows? Maybe not. But we all know, though, the board wasn't just going to sit back and be like, all right, we're cool with you now, Disney. It wasn't quite over for them even before this.
Yes. Oh, yeah. They were. I think they were going to. I think they had a lot of plans. Let's say to urinate in Disney's cornflakes, which now that's off the table, at least as of right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because if someone's going to piss in your cornflakes anyway, do you do the Hail Mary and land the punch? You know what I'm saying? Like, from Disney's perspective, maybe it was worth it, because if we're going to get shit anyway, we might as well try what we can to keep some of this. So I don't know. It's interesting, but we'll definitely stay on it and report on this as we get more developments, because I think fairly soon. We're going to start seeing more. Ronnie DeSantis has to do something. He can't look like a beta to all his base. He's got to do something right now. He's got to come out swinging, and he can't wait 6 months to have something.
I agree.
So there's something has to happen.
I very much agree. Our buddy Showcase sent us a video. Here we go.
Okay, I'll share the.
Well, I can't share because it's in a chat, but I can share you the audio.
Okay,
so
sounds good. And this is courteous of Showcase of Wishes?
Showcase of Wishes, that's correct.
All right.
Let's see here. Just got to change my audio settings here. Okay, I think this might play. Let me know, OG, if you can actually hear this.
Flack.
Can you hear it? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Flack from a company that some people have heard of in Florida named Disney. But ultimately, my job is not to kowtow to some woke corporation in Burbank, California. My job's to stand up for the children of my state. And so, of course, we signed the bill. Of course, we stood up for what's right. And it got into a big back and forth. And, at the end of the day, these companies, first of all, I don't know that it's the appropriate use of shareholder resources to be shilling for gender ideology in kindergarten, but nevertheless,
he has a point there. It's interesting because I'll keep it playing there. The Florida legislature just expanded their 1557 bill, right? The as people call it, don't say gay. They just expanded to include all of the Floridian curriculum from, I believe, K through 12, and maybe even beyond that. And they just recently passed that, I believe, in Tallahassee. Disney didn't say anything. So from that standpoint, I don't know. Mission accomplished? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a little rich, though, a politician talking about Disney's misuse of shareholder money when, come on, politicians aren't exactly known for, utilizing taxpayer money all that well. I'm sure DeSantis included, so.
Oh, I don't disagree with you there at all. Yeah.
Oh, what I said, I'm sorry, you're throwing rocks in glass houses. I said throwing rocks in glass stones. You know what I meant.
I know what you mean. No, I know what you mean. Hey, you're good. I talked over you, so you didn't even have to acknowledge it. But we'll go ahead and proceed.
Let's do it.
That's what they decided to do. But you may have a right to do that, but you don't have a right to force my citizens to subsidize that. And the fact is, Disney had their own government that they controlled in the state of Florida for decades, and they basically got everything they wanted
real quick, though.
For the many decades they've been operating in.
But is it okay? So he says that citizens shouldn't have to pay for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But should the citizens also have to pay for his war with Disney? I mean, is that something that they should foot the bill for? I don't know. I think that there's a case to be made about that. I mean, there's more important things going on right now, and he's blowing through money like that to wage a war against woke Disney. I think that's equally as
That's fair. It'll be interesting to see how much of this actually emanates from the executive branch itself, right?
Yeah.
Under his direct purview, or whether it actually be handling Congress during a regular session. It's going to be very, very interesting. But we'll continue.
Yep.
Florida until now, because now there's a new sheriff in town. We've taken away their self-governing status.
Well,
there's a lot of little back and forth going on now with the state taking control, but rest assured, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's more to come in that regard.
So he's promising that he will go forward there.
Yeah. But is this going to be, I'm going to release the Kraken again, or is this going to be the real deal? That is yet to be seen. We will see.
He has no choice, OG. He has no choice. This is what I'm trying to tell you. He has no choice. I just showed you the polls. He either does this or he's bust. He will have no political future. That's it. I don't care. I don't care how much bad advice he's going to get. It's just anybody can see. Even Gavin Newsom himself was mocking DeSantis over this
He
thing.
actually got him pretty good, to be honest.
Yeah, so do you have his quote here? I have the article here. Let me see if I can bring up the quote.
Pull it up. This is pretty funny, dude. I'm not a fan of Newsom at all either, but this was pretty funny. It played into this quote.
Because now there's a new sheriff in town.
It played into that, and I didn't know Newsom had jokes, but apparently he does.
Didn't know either.
I'll go ahead and share your screen when you're ready.
Please. I thought I had it up here. Okay. Yeah, here we go.
All right.
I got it now. There we go, and there we go.
There he is. Gavin Newsom. Go ahead.
Heckles Ron DeSantis over latest Disney power struggle on the Florida governor's home turf. Kimberly Leonard via Yahoo News. Go ahead, OG, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to read the headline. You beat me to it.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Newsom's told Insider, I guess there's a new sheriff in town. As in a not so subtle reference to a comment DeSantis made when he appointed a new board to oversee Disney's district. It's Mickey Mouse back on top. Go ahead, play that drop again.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Because now there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah, and there is. He ain't lying.
He's not. Apparently, that was Mickey Mouse, and to Newsom's credit, he is correct. But you can't be shown up by Governor Gavin Newsom, California. You just cannot have that stand. Like you said, OG, a lot of Republicans are mocking DeSantis, right? And by the way, coming off of even some people who said that he didn't go far enough initially, right?
Right.
This has deep political implications for his presidential campaign. I don't think he's stopping right here. And look, I understand it's all going to be contingent on what response that might actually look like, right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, he can only go so far without looking like a crazy person. You don't want to be so nuclear with it that you come off, because then you do more damage than what it's worth at that point.
I suppose. I just don't know what restraint he has regarding this. I just don't know where that actually comes from. You say optics and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he's looking at it anymore that way. And like I said, he's getting terrible advice. Other thing too, to understand about this, remember the shareholders meeting is tomorrow, right?
Yes, it
is. And you know, Mr. Bob Iger is going to be asked about this, right? Will he make the same mistake that his predecessor made when at the last shareholders meeting, Bob Chapek was asked about what was going on in Florida? And well, as people now know, that precipitated the entire thing involving Reedy Creek in the first place. Will Iger himself make the same mistakes? I doubt it. But his comments might very well shape what response actually comes out of Florida.
Yeah, no, Iger, this is one thing about Bob Iger, whether you love him or hate him, this guy knows he knows the optics game very, very well. We saw what happened with the last quarterly earnings. I mean, the stock price went up. It was like $120 a share off of what he was saying. This guy knows how to sell a crowd, okay? Mm-hmm. He's gonna manage this much better than Chapes did. And
God, I sound like a Bob Iger dick rider.
But it's true. He knows how he could sell snow to a snowman, this guy, okay? I think he'll be just fine. But I'm actually I'm wondering though what surprises Ronnie DeSantis is gonna maybe pull tomorrow to kind of derail that whole thing. So we'll see.
Yes, absolutely, right there. Here's the other thing I want to go ahead and posit to our viewers before we conclude this chapter of the RCID saga.
It's a chapter for sure.
It's a chapter, right? I don't want to reference the name of the person who actually gave us this theory, because I think they do want to be anonymous. However, we were both privy to a conversation, OG, about potentially, and this is going to be a little bit more conspiratorial, right? Yeah. But potentially what this could all be about. And the setup was like this. If 45 is positioning himself for a presidential campaign, right? And Iger could, let's say, affect the campaigns of both DeSantis and 45. Well, which one is a person like Iger going to want to favor over the other. Now, we just talked about those establishment implications between DeSantis and some of maybe people who are in Bob Iger's purview.
Right.
One would presume then that Iger would want DeSantis to be in the White House over another 45 term. Is it possible, OG, that this was orchestrated in a way? And again, remember the timing. It happens all around the indictment of 45 himself, which was, that was the differentiating factor for DeSantis launching a campaign against 45, right? Could these wind in the political sails of DeSantis be placed there purposefully in order to have DeSantis get the nomination in the primary?
It's interesting. Team DeSantis is we're kind of working with Iger and sort of this whole war is sort of this theater. It's an interesting theory. Yeah, I mean, look, I was one of those people where I was kind of poo-pooing the whole 4D chesting with Chapek, like the fall guy theory, and I was really poo-pooing that. I'm like, there's no way Iger would do that. He's not gonna roll dice with the company and do something like that. But then the way the whole thing played out, where Chapes was in there for a couple years, and then he got booted on a Sunday night, and Iger came back. I was like, wait a minute, maybe that wasn't so crazy after all. Ever since that Sunday night firing of Bob Chapek, my whole mindset has changed a little bit with Bob Iger. This guy is very savvy. I don't put anything past him. So this is a possibility. I'm not saying it's gonna. I don't know. I'm not saying with any certainty that this is what's going on. Is it a possibility, though, considering Iger's sort of savviness in the past? Absolutely. Or maybe, though, it could be the flip side, too, though. I mean, and look, this is even more of a long shot, but just putting it out there. Maybe Iger is more of a Trump fan. Now, remember, Bob Iger sat on the Trump board, the business board.
Sure did.
So he has a little bit of a relationship there. He might not want to admit it because he's, progressive, but he does have a relationship there. Maybe he thinks he's sabotaging DeSantis with this and trying to get Trump in there. I don't know. Again, just a theory, but it could work that way as well.
Well, not to poke holes in your theory, but
go ahead. No,
I doubt it. We gotta go into more into politics, right? So, Bob Iger, one of the reasons why he's back in the seat that he's in, and why Hollywood is kind of rallying with Bob Iger, is to reestablish relationships with the other country you see depicted on the screen here. Who is the biggest critic of that said country? It'd be 45.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're aligned, right? On this front. I just don't know. Maybe they are.
But the enemy of your enemy is your friend, though, too. Sometimes you make alliances with people to get to a certain end game, right?
Here's the thing. That's interesting, right? So 45 has had big problems with the trade agreements as signed by the U.S. and this other nation, right? Okay. Now we know that box office revenue coming out of this nation is capped at 25%. Why? Because of a 2012 trade agreement. Well, Bob Iger is probably looking to increase that just a little bit, right? So that when they produce an MCU film, let's say, for example, and it releases in that country, they get a little bit more than 25%. Who's best to do that than 45 back in the White House? So it's a very interesting thing. But regardless, let's go back to that Washington Post article.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were...
Just for a second. Oh, you're fine. Remember Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah.
What he said. Quote, "Here's what happens when a career politician meets a woke corporation. They strike a deal, and both sides win. The politician gets to do a press conference, and the company gets to do exactly what it wants." If there is no response here, and if this is all theater, then we don't see a response. And maybe, DeSantis just lets this go and focuses on more national issues, let's say. Or maybe there is a response and makes DeSantis looks like a winner, but the heart of the issues at play here don't actually get solved, and Disney gets to retain much of its power. Could possibly happen. But Ramaswamy feels that, maybe there is a deal behind the scenes. Who knows? It's all very, very interesting. But we're just going to have to see. And I think we'll find out soon. Like you said, OG, DeSantis doesn't have years. He has months.
No.
And honestly, in my opinion, he has weeks. Look, in 3 months, a 30-point swing, right? He does not have a lot of time. He's gonna have to solve this issue if he's going to make a bid for the primary run for the Republican 2024 ticket.
And with that base, you cannot come off weak. And he looks super weak, and everyone is mocking this guy. I mean, it's crisis time. Like he needs to make moves like you said, like within the next couple of weeks, or he's done.
He absolutely has to. There's no question. And again, the shareholders meeting is tomorrow, right? So we have to assume that no matter, because Iger's going to be asked about this. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to. Yeah. We have to assume that DeSantis has something to respond with after those comments are actually made. So we'll see. But this is where we're at right here. A lot of legal theory, right? A lot of back and forth. Like I said, I talked about the political implications, talked about the judicial implications, talked about the legal theory and everything like that. It's up to you viewers to decide, what you think might happen, what could happen, and so forth. Please leave your comments down below and tell us what you think about this, because honestly, everybody's kind of divided on this. I mean, obviously there are camps where people lie, but this is we're in uncharted territory here for sure.
Right. No, we are, and that's what we do. Like, look. We all we can do is educate ourselves enough and give you, the audience, our opinion based on what we know.
Correct.
Dre or myself, we're not claiming to be experts in law or anything like that. We know what we know, and we're in that lane, and we're going to give you our opinions based on what we know. Same goes for you at home, folks. Just taking the information, and wherever you fall on that opinion, say it down below. It's very, very interesting, and it's a very complex thing. This Reedy Creek thing is very, very complex. It's not easily digestible. Let's just say that. It's very complicated.
I will agree for sure. You could still hear me, right?
Oh yeah, I can hear you just fine. Yeah,
good. Okay, I just changed the setting. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, but I mean, we're not experts in this, right? But we hope that we've collected enough, I would say, combined expertise, let's say, in this field at varying degrees to give you, the viewer, as much to think about as possible, right? So as much to consider as possible. Because sometimes, that's the thing about this, right? You hear something from a lawyer and you go, well, yeah, but what if the judge is like in DeSantis' pocket? Like, that kind of changes the whole thing, right? Or something to that effect. And it's like, I want, what I would be looking for when it comes to a video on this subject is a much more comprehensive view of the whole thing. And I don't think one exists outside the one you just heard. So
no, exactly.
We should accomplish on our end.
There's a lot of bias out there, and it's okay to have a bias, but unfortunately, a lot of content creators act on that bias.
Right.
Here in OG55, hey, look, I say all the time, I'm biased. I love Disney. I'm not going to hide it. But if Universal has a win, which they did with the wages recently, I'm going to say Universal had a win, right? You got to be honest. I mean, even if you have that bias, you can't act on the bias, though,
Correct.
And unfortunately,
Can't cloud your judgment. Go ahead.
Exactly, 100%. Dre, thank you so much for coming on, brother. Talking Reedy Creek, talking DeSantis, Tallahassee, all that good stuff. If you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media.
The best place to find me is going to be at VashGuy on Twitter. It's right down there. Just go ahead and type that in. And it should pop up for, as Christine Waysons McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. Hopefully I answered a lot of those questions, by the way, that came in on Twitter regarding this whole topic. I know people just wanted to know general thoughts, but I know some people had some intricacies and questions. Hopefully we answered those here. which, by the way, if you want to have more answers to your questions or see me again, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55. We have some amazing shows, not just the one you're watching right here with Orange Grove 55 and Orange Nerd, hosted by the amazing brother, person, savant on my left right here. But we also have a range of other shows, including Citrus Corner, hosted by our good friend and brother, George, who goes into everything Walt Disney World related. Story Geeks with Jay, where we talk about the stories that impact our lives. Right now, we are covering the episodes of Mandalorian as they come out. Honestly, this season gets a lot of hate. I actually like this season quite a bit.
too.
So to find out more about why we do, well, you're gonna want to subscribe to see those episodes as they come out. We're doing them live. It's really, really cool.
Yep.
And you can also find my show on here as well, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh, right from the Grove.
Thank you very much.
And just for good measure, because,
please,
why not?
Because now there's a new sheriff in town.
I got a new drop, so I got to use it,
Hey, of course, absolutely. Hey. The only sheriff on Orange Grove 55 is a gentleman to my left. That's where it is. Okay, I am not I am not Disney with the RCID. You have this one, sir.
Well, thank you, brother, and thank you all for watching. Comment down below. Disney glimpses, if you're watching this, brother, keep crushing it on Twitter, man. You are. Hey, I hear people want you to tone it down. Don't tone it down. Tone it up.
That's right. Go, as we say on here. Balls to the walls, right?
Yes. But yes, a big shout out to DG, our friend here on the channel, and a big shout out for Showcase, actually, for that audio. That was awesome.
Right.
Comment down below, and as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.